Hello. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about some of the fears and objections that we come up against when we start homeschooling. And so when I began to consider homeschooling my children, I would look at other homeschool families and I'd instantly become like overwhelmed or, in a way, even intimidated. It really wasn't until I embraced the idea that my homeschool didn't have to look like everyone else's homeschool because no family's alike, right? So no homeschool needs to be alike. It's really there that I found freedom, the freedom to have like a unique homeschool that God intended for my family and to accept the fact that it might not look like others, right? We really have to be careful not to guard against comparison and intimidation because the enemy will come up against us and he will tell us that we're not doing enough or we're not doing a good enough job. So this video is really about some of the fears that he tries to put on us, and we have to be on guard and make sure that we are keeping our eyes focused on the fact that we are called to be homeschooled moms, and no one knows our child any better than we do, better than we do. We just have to be confident that God has called us to this place. So one of the places to kind of start is to really think about like what pictures come to mind when you think about homeschooling. In my mindset module, we talk about some of the things that we talk about, like kind of deconstructing that and how we have to look at our own educational experience and really see how that might be affecting even how we are educating our children today. Okay, so I want you to just kind of think about like what scares you the most, maybe what some negative things you heard about homeschooling, and what's really holding you back from jumping right in if you haven't started. Some of you may be watching this and you've already started, but we still have, even after probably 10 years of homeschooling, I still had some fears and things that I had to overcome consistently in order for me to remain focused on really what God had called me to do. So I'm really hoping that I'm going to calm some of those fears and overcome some of those objections with this video. So at first, your homeschooling might feel a little bit like this. I'm not one for bungee jumping. I don't know if you are or not, but I felt like I was just jumping into a whole new world that I really didn't know much about. But eventually, it will feel more like this. So let's look at some of the objections or maybe fears. And sometimes I like to call them homeschool myths that you may have heard, or maybe even some of these are lurking in your own mind. So at the beginning, it's kind of like, will they even let me? Okay, well, the good news is that Ohio homeschool laws have you and your children in mind, and they are very family-friendly homeschool laws. Now, I'm not going to go a whole lot into that here in this video, but I would refer you to the module that looks at notifications and that kind of thing, so you can really begin to understand a little bit of an overview. I also give you websites where you can go and you can read the law for yourself. And I would encourage you to do that. Parent requirements, just real quick, are high school diploma or GED. And again, some great resources out there. This video really isn't about this specifically, but yes, you are more than able to homeschool your child. All right, so here's one that I have heard more in maybe regards to me, because people will say, well, I could never homeschool my child, but you're a teacher, so I'm sure you know how to do this. Maybe you weren't a good student in school. Maybe you were terrible at math, right? So again, I'm gonna reassure you here and say, no one knows your child better than you. It is really not about acquiring knowledge. It is really more about presenting opportunities for learning, and just even modeling an ongoing lifestyle of learning will get you a long way in homeschooling. It's about living a life alongside our children instead of kind of sending them off to be, someone else's responsibility. There are some academic subjects, obviously, that you will feel more comfortable teaching, right? This kind of a rule of thought that I encourage parents with is that you only have to be one step ahead of your child, just one step. So that means if tomorrow you're learning about, I don't know, multiplication, right? And maybe don't understand multiplication. You just need to get yourself to know about multiplication. And you can learn right alongside your children. And it's okay to say, I don't know. There are so many resources and supports out there nowadays. And I want you to kind of look at it as if you and your child you are a learning team, and together you are learning. And you can always, some of the high school subjects, if it really gets to be where your child is struggling in something he wants to learn, and maybe you don't feel like especially math can be, some of the higher level maths can be very challenging, you can always hire a tutor or find someone in your family, sometimes your spouse, sometimes your husband's a little better at maybe math, but there are lots of options out there. So, whoops. What if I mess up my child? That may be an everyday question that creeps into your mind. Like, I don't know if I'm teaching my kids the right thing. I don't know if this is this is the best option for my child. This is kind of where, almost like on a daily, you have to remind yourself that God has called you to do this, and he's right there helping you. That I love this quote. It says, there's no end to education. It is not that you read a book and pass an examination and finish the education. The whole of life, from the moment you were born to the moment you die, is a process of learning. So that kind of takes some of the pressure off. Like, well, what if I'm not teaching my child exactly what he needs to know, right? I want you to trust in the Lord and lean on, not on your own understanding, just like God. Lean on God and realize that there are a lot of things that you just don't have any control over. And there are going to be things that I wish we hadn't done that. And there will be days where you are saying, I am so glad we did that. But remember, this is a journey. It's a journey, and it's about your growth as well. So if you stay humble, pray, and trust God to take your efforts and bring forth good stuff, it'll happen, right? I do want to challenge you just a little bit here and to ask yourself, am I a learner? Am I living my life as a learner? Is there something new that I'm learning today? Because I think modeling that learning kind of a mentality for our children is really, really important. In another video, I talk about the difference between fixed and growth mindset. Might be something you want to watch. You want to read a video or watch a video or read an article on. Let me know. All right. So some people will say this. They'll say homeschooling just costs a lot of money. Well, let me say, I'm just going to counteract that with, you can homeschool with a library card. You can literally put on your addendum to your notification of intent to homeschool, library resources. There are lots of free resources online at the library. You can purchase a curriculum that's very step-by-step. It's not necessary, but you can. There used to be a lot of used book fairs. I think there are still some around. You can buy used books online that kind of get you maybe something you want at a more reduced cost. Things like Amazon, eBay. Your homeschool group will often have maybe like a garage sale or a way to like swap materials. Co-ops will have book sales. And if you choose to buy maybe a new curriculum and you have multiple children, remember that cost will maybe cover a couple of other years of homeschooling for another child. So I just encourage you to recycle, trade with friends. I know that the homeschool network that way, it works very well because homeschoolers can be very resourceful. All right, so I don't know where to start, right? Sometimes it can seem so overwhelming. And I'm just going to encourage you to take things step by step, but also to keep it simple. It's like KISS, right? Keep it simple, Susie, right? So a lot of times I'll just tell you, like, start with the basics, like, and keep moving forward from there. Like maybe like start with a read aloud, right? Find a really great book that you want to read to your children. Every journey has a starting line, right? At the starting line, you don't always have the full picture of your destination, especially when you're journeying with God, because a lot of times he's asking you to pivot or change direction, right? So keep it simple. Focus on reading, focus on some math, and maybe some writing, just kind of depending on where your child is at. So this is a real good place to talk about curriculum, but the choices are all yours. What I want to say here is that you get to decide. In the state of Ohio, they give you a list of things that you are to be covering, but the way you cover that, the topics that you cover within those categories, it's all up to you. And when you notify, you give a list of intended curriculum. That can change the minute you put it down on paper. You do not have to let them know and say, oh, you know what? I was going to use the X, but now I'm going to use Y and Z. It is completely up to you. And it is that intended curriculum is for notification purposes only. All right. And I want you to remember this is a learning. It's a learning experience. There are going to be times where you start with some materials and you think, oh, this is going to work really, really well. And then you're going to, a couple weeks in, you're like, oh, I don't really like this, or my children don't really like it, or it doesn't seem to line up with the kind of learners they are. Just allow yourself the process, right? There is also, if you're bringing your children out from maybe a few years on public school, or maybe they've been in public school for years, there is something called deschooling that I will cover on another video. And I have a really great article that will give you some ideas of where to start with that. And just remember, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I want you to allow yourself some time to really find a learning life rhythm and implement things slowly. Give yourself space to learn and grow as a homeschool mom. Just be easy on yourself. Don't put so much pressure on you and your children. My homeschool friends and I used to say that homeschooling was really more about us and what God wanted to do in us, right? Than what our children were learning. So I think if you decide to embrace, or you're already in the homeschool, you probably have already realized that is very true. This is the hot button. What about socialization? Okay, well, I used to always tell people, I have 4 children. I have a social group in and of itself. And this is where I would really stop and really think and ask yourself, what am I talking about? Sometimes we say, oh, I want my child to be socialized. I want my child to be with other kids their age. That may be true. That may be something that your child needs. But I just recently was talking with a family, and we were talking about their family unit and their extended family, the cousins and the different things. And there were different things going on in their life in which they were connecting to their brothers and sisters, and therefore their kids were connecting with their brothers and sisters' kids. And I was saying that might be enough. I think they were involved in one other outside activity. And I said, focus on that. Don't feel like you have to go out and find a play group or find a co-op to be part of. Look and see what you already have, and then ask yourself, do I need to add something in? And a lot of times you'll find yourself saying, no, no, I really don't. All right. So here's just a list of some ideas. If you are looking for socialization, there's 4-H, co-ops, church, art lessons, sports teams, gymnastic, dance lesson, playing an instrument, go to the park, moms groups. There's all kinds of ways that you can be connected out there. So another thing, I have no idea what my child needs to learn. I do want to tell you that no one knows your child better than you do. And there are going to be times in this journey where learning how to read is very important. And there's other times where it might be, you know what, my child needs to learn to share. So remember, learning is not always about that academic piece, but in our family units, a lot of times it's about building character, and it's about learning to get along with others, and just helping your child grow into the person that you desire them to be, and that God desires for them to be. So where do you start? I like to say we start with your values, and you really think about, like, what is most important? What is most important to you? What does success look like in your mind or for your adult child? And you can start with some of your child's interests, gifts, and strengths. I should mute my phone. So like I said, a lot of our valuable learning has nothing to do with academics. All right, how about this one? I don't have room in my home to set up a classroom. Well, guess what? Setting up a classroom, even though it's kind of fun, I've been in homes where classrooms were set up, and they can be really fun and unique and well used by the family, but you do not have to have a separate room. You can homeschool on the picnic table. You can homeschool in a hammock. You can homeschool on the coffee table. I would just encourage you to kind of think, what is your family style, right? And just really look at your whole life as your classroom. I like to say that kids start learning the minute their eyes pop open, and they stop learning the minute they close them. All right. Oh, this can be a big one because this is your outside pressure. My family doesn't approve of homeschooling. Well, first off, love them anyway. Take a big breath. Families can actually be the most critical because you do care. You do care what they think a lot of times, right? Try not to get defensive. Try to not justify or argue or defend, but instead ask some questions, right? Help them, help you, ask some questions that will help you better understand what their concern is. And also, they can sometimes, asking them questions can open the conversation so you get a chance to better explain why you think homeschooling is best for your child. And then they can begin to go, oh, I see what you mean. Oftentimes, this disapproval is really just them needing more information and really allowing them time to see the fruit. My father did not understand why we were homeschooling, but years in, he said, I wasn't quite sure that I understood why you were doing this, but I'm seeing good things come and I'm starting to understand. So again, ask questions. You might have share resources. There are some great resources out there if you're at all interested in that you can share with them. Gives them like maybe they want some statistics, right? They think like, oh, homeschoolers don't go to college or whatever. There's a website out there that has a lot of statistics if you're getting those kind of questions. I think the best idea that I've heard kind of dealing with this is get them involved. Like, what does grandpa like to do? Does he work with wood? Does he like to fix cars? Homeschooling frees up lots of time for our children to spend time with those extended family members. So, get them involved, have a day where they go and they bake with grandma, whatever that is, and just help them. Maybe they like to hunt, maybe they like to bird watch. Look at the interests of other family members and say, hey, especially maybe those that aren't approving, really saying, you know what, you're really great at fixing cars. Like, could Johnny come over and kind of help you, maybe hand you tools or hang out? I think it's a great way to win over family members, because they start to see just what a value this is. And plus, it gives the opportunity to build those strong family relationships that will last a lifetime. Here, it's really important, and again, we'll talk about this on another video, for you to really solidify your why. If you are strongly know why you are homeschooling, then a lot of times some of these fears or these questions or this disapproval from others will not be quite so hard to walk through if you really are solidified and confident of why you are homeschooling. But we'll talk about that in another video. So for now, I'm hoping that you are stepping away from this video just feeling a little more peace and a little more confident that you indeed are called to homeschool and you have what it takes. God bless you.